You were talking to me the other day about something that I was hoping that you would be able to like verbalize with like next year's mocks in terms of
Yeah.
positional picks, like where we essentially we already have mocks coming out. Like, just kill me, right?
Yeah.
We already have
The
mocks
way
coming
too
out for next
early
year. Yeah,
James
yeah, yeah.
Pierce edge from
But
Tennessee
yeah,
drafted number
it's like
1.
what?
Oh, what?
Yeah, but you said something really interesting to me that I thought was worth discussing on here. You're noticing a theme with these mocks, right?
I'm noticing a big theme, and it's the
You want to talk
I
about it?
do, yeah,
I'm curious.
it's the every time it's the Carolina Panthers number 1. And not
Right.
and to be fair, not every time is it them moving off of Bryce, but it's typically that edge from that same edge I just referenced from Tennessee. Like I think his name's James Pierce Jr. or something. I'm not familiar. I'm
Sure.
not familiar with his game, but he must be nice if he's mocked number 1.
Yeah.
Um, but that made me kind of like my initial I'm a Bryce guy. I think Bryce is going to be good. I think Bryce was put in
Speak on it.
like we look at like this year and we keep saying like Caleb Williams is the best situation for any number 1 overall draft pick. And I think Bryce had the absolute worst.
Mm.
I mean Bryce Young's number 1 wide receiver was a 32-year-old Adam Thielen who has not been good for 4 years. So
Well, Mingo was a bust too.
Mingo was a bust, and
Jonathan Mingo, they've
they
drafted to be
very
kind of
they
like the
very
next.
foolishly brought in
Yeah.
Miles Sanders, who anybody with eyes could see
Horrible.
was a merchant of the the Philadelphia offensive line. He's not good, and that was shown when he
No.
got behind a normal O line in Carolina, and he was absolutely terrible. And then they brought Chuba Hubbard back in, and it's like, okay, guys, what are we doing with
And they
this?
benched, and Chuba Hubbard was their starting running back
Dude,
over him.
that's what I mean.
He was healthy.
So I'm looking at.
Yeah.
I think that was like. I mean, I dead ass, and I've been a
Yeah.
Lions fan my whole life. I think that was the worst offense I've ever seen in my life. Like I think that was the worst.
Yeah, I only
offense
watched them once last
It was
year
a
against
brutal watch, dude. It was
New
a
Orleans of all teams.
brutal
Did you
watch.
watch that game?
I don't remember if I did or not.
I watched them play New Orleans, and it was like, oh my god, I don't know. I mean, I love all kinds of different teams. I
Sure.
love to go way outside of like my usual like schedule of
Yeah.
like, okay, this week I'm gonna watch this. I couldn't get through that
No, it
game.
was
It was
bad,
New
dude. It was
Orleans
so
and
hard to watch.
Panthers. Luckily,
But
it was a Monday
nobody
night
could, and
doubleheader, I think.
nobody could. And that was the thing is like, like word to
A
Tyler,
horrible,
word to
horrible
Tyler,
situation
word to
for him.
Tyler Beamer. But I just kept hearing all year about how shitty Bryce was, and it's like, motherfucker, his fucking wide receivers can't get open. Who is he supposed? What is he supposed to do? What is he supposed to do? Like,
Yeah,
what is this man
zero
supposed to do? Oh,
playmakers.
he's tiny. Okay, yeah, he's tiny, but man, fuck his line is collapsing after 1 second, and he's just looking for Adam Thielen at this point because everybody else is dog water, and
Yeah.
so that made me like
Which is crazy, right? Remember the meme back in the day? Lions fans know this one where it was like, "Fuck it, Calvin down there
fucking
somewhere,"
Calvin
and
down
it
there
was like
somewhere. Yeah, 100%.
because our O line was bad and we had like no other
Yeah,
players, and sometimes Matt Stafford would just throw like
yeah,
glory balls
yeah,
down to fucking.
100%.
Uh, Imagine that meme, but it's Adam Thielen instead
Yeah,
of Calvin Johnson.
bro,
That's like
that's a
what Bryce was
nightmare.
dealing with.
That's a nightmare
Yeah,
situation.
that's rough, man. That's
So
rough.
I looked at like their offseason acquisitions, and I'm like, all right, like what do these guys do? Because I think Scott Federer, their previous GM, is arguably the worst GM ever. If you like go through and look at his picks, like no hits, very very bad picks, like
Well,
just shit that didn't make sense. Like
and horrible trading like
yeah, of
time
course. I mean,
windows,
you
right?
gave
Like trading Brian, like declining a first for Brian
yeah
Burns, then
yeah
trading him for a second, declining a first for
yes
CMC, then trading
yes
him for a second.
trading
It's
for
like, dude,
trading
figure it out, man.
giving the Bears Caleb Williams for Bryce Young. Caleb Williams, DJ Moore,
Yeah,
Jalen Johnson, Keenan Allen. I mean, it's like the most lopsided
was
trade
it a
ever.
troll job?
Dude, it's got to
Was
be.
that
I
a
mean,
troll?
Scott Federer should be in jail, like for what he did to what he
Yeah,
did to the Carolina Panthers. But so I looked. You know, they brought a new GM in. I don't know shit about him, but I'm looking at his moves, and I'm like, all right, like let's see what he's got because he didn't have any first round pick. We know that. Because they got Caleb Williams, you bastard. Hope he sucks, or else
trash.
it's fuck you guys forever too. Um,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but
Straight up.
all right, you know what I mean. But they had a
Mhm.
couple of interesting signings. So they brought in Robert Hunt from Miami, who was a guard, and they paid him, a disgusting amount of money, but that's what you have to do when you have a shitty team, right? You got to basically bribe people to come here. And then they
Mhm.
also brought in Damian Lewis, who's the opposite guard from Seattle, who is pretty good career in Seattle thus far. Still a pretty young
Yeah.
guy. And then they took Ike Ikwonwu last year, I believe, in the first
Yep.
round, who left tackle,
Yep.
who was I believe from all accounts he was pretty good. I think the line itself was shitty, so it was kind of like it made him look kind of worse because the line overall was not very good. But I'm fairly confident
Right.
that Icky was pretty good himself. And then the right tackle is this dude named Taylor Morton, who's like, he hasn't missed a game. He's like an anchor, right? He hasn't missed a game
Yeah.
since 2018. He's like been very solid. I think their issue was more their guard play than it was their tackle play. And I don't know what the situation is at center, to be perfectly honest with you. I didn't deep dive them this much, but I was just looking at the signings and kind of looking at the line. So I'm like, okay, the line on paper looks like it should be significantly upgraded. And then you look at the
Mm.
weapons, right? Like they drafted Jonathan Brooks out of Texas, who's like a completely dynamic running back who
Love him.
I don't know
Love
why. I
him.
don't know why he was not talked about in the pre-draft process. It seems like running backs were just like not a thing this year.
Injury last year.
No, I know, but
ACL last
yeah,
year.
but
Yeah,
still, you know
that's
what I
why.
mean? Like it seems
No, but he's a
interesting.
dog, dude. He's
Yeah,
better than all the running backs
yeah,
in this draft.
he was probably
Clearly.
RB1 this year, and they ended up getting him in like the late second, I think. So I think they traded
Yeah.
up for
Yeah,
him.
yeah, he fell.
Um,
Mhm.
and I think that's a sneaky good pick. Like he might not be ready by week 1, but man, if you
No,
can get
but
him in there like halfway through the year, because the expectations are nothing, right? Like there is no expectations for this team.
yeah.
Like they're not playoff push team. They're not playoff win ready. They're not win the division ready. They just want to be better than the worst team in the league. So you don't have to rush Jonathan Brooks back, right? But now you have a guy for the next 5 years that can really be like a dog for you. And then they
Yeah.
traded up to get Xavier Legette, which I think was an awesome move. I think it was an awesome move. I
Yep.
loved Xavier Legette. I was really hoping he would fall to us in the second. That was never going to happen once his tape went out. And he's a South Carolina kid getting drafted by North Carolina. You know what I mean? Like that's fire. Like he
Yeah.
stays in the Carolinas. He can be the hometown hero. He's unbelievable. He's like DK Metcalf, but like bigger somehow.
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yep.
unbelievable. I think the kid is going to be
Yeah.
really good. I think he immediately becomes your wide receiver 1. You traded for Deontay Johnson, which I think was a great pick because, or I'm sorry, a great trade because of the Leggett pick. Because Leggett becomes your 1. Now Deontay,
Only because of that. Now he doesn't have to
100%.
be
It
your
it
1.
looked funky
Yeah,
before, but now that Deontay Johnson's your
it did.
2 and your last year number 1 Adam Thielen, who's still a serviceable receiver, in no way, shape, or form is he a number 1, but as a number 3, now we're talking. Now we're talking.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Agreed.
okay, so
Yeah, of course.
Now Bryce has some weapons to work with and should have some time. And then you look
Yep.
at the defense. Like I still think trading Brian Burns was stupid, but I think he was more of like I think it was more like cut the cancer out. That seemed like it was one of those situations where it was like let's.
Can you blame him?
No, I don't blame him, but
I want out of here.
yeah, no, but they have
But
you know,
have fun.
they
You're in
ha-
New York. You're in for the Giants now.
literally, dude. Careful what you wish
Talk
for.
about talk about
Yeah.
failing sideways.
Oh, I swear to God. But they have
like failing up.
they
It's
have
like not
no
really.
100%. That's exactly what
Yeah.
that was. It's like, oh, I get to go fuck, because you know what I mean. Like,
Oh, right.
because
Yeah.
Carolina's problem has not been their defense. Their defense is actually pretty good. So they got Derek Brown, who they
Yeah, it
just
was
signed to
okay
a
last
big
year.
extension. I mean, they have Shaq Thompson, who's been holding down the linebacking team for 5-6 years now, if not longer. Like Shaq Thompson's been a solid.
Feels like a long
Yeah, it feels
time.
like a long time.
Underrated.
Very underrated. You signed Jadeveon
Yeah.
Clowney, which is a good. If he can be what he was the last couple of years, that's a serviceable bet right there. I mean, he's not any
Yeah.
world breaker, but he's a serviceable vet. You signed
Yeah.
Jordan Fuller, which is sneaky good. You got J.C. Horn. I pray to God he can stay healthy because I think J.C. Horn can be very, very good, but he's just made of glass. And we haven't been able to see what he can really be. But when the
Yeah.
moments we have, it's kind of like I was saying earlier with Christian Gonzalez. We've seen a lockdown corner. He just always gets hurt, and it's like, fuck, man.
Yeah.
Put a season together. They have Xavier Woods, another very, very seasoned vet. I love that for the development of J.C. Horn. Just somebody
Yeah.
who's been like a lockdown secondary piece who can kind of like teach the young bull how to like stick it out in there. And then they drafted in the 7th round Mike Barrett from Michigan, who was awesome last year. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
I'm
Another he's a dog. He was a
he's
dog
a
for us.
little undersized, but man, he was just he was a bulldog all year, and I think that
Yeah.
if
You need some
if
of that
you,
juice
I
in there to,
totally
like,
agree. I
to
totally agree.
inspire the team to, like, make plays, and, he's got a fire. You need a little fire in there.
100%.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
So
When you're
so
that bad, you have
I
to have something
think
to
that
play for.
defense could, barring any like major injuries again, like I think that defense could be serviceable. I think that offense could be very
Super
serviceable.
interesting.
So when I look at the thing
Yeah.
and I see them just consistently mocked as the worst team in the league, I don't see that. I see them as more of a picking in the 9 to 12 range. Like I don't think they're going to be good, but
So
I
interesting.
don't think
Yeah.
they're going to be. I mean,
Yeah.
mind you, bro,
They won't be.
just the year before they were picking ninth. That's why
Right.
it was
Right.
more they didn't have the quarterback, and then they traded the DJ Moore piece to get the quarterback, and then everything fell apart, and guys got injured, and
Didn't
it didn't work
Yeah,
out.
didn't
But
go well for them.
no, it didn't. But I don't know. I look at that roster and I go, this is not the worst roster in the NFL. There's a worse
Right.
roster in the NFL. I don't know whose it is, but it's worse. There's somebody who's worse.
Yeah. Well, it's funny because I I completely agree on the Carolina. Like it's almost becoming like so disrespectful now.
Yeah.
And you texted me this the other day that you were like, only I'm seeing is Carolina. I'm Carolina, and it's kind of funny because I was like, I thought of like this doing a segment about this, and I was like, who's like the AFC version of this team that
Yeah.
I'm just sort of like I'm seeing as like they're gonna be the last place AFC team, the
Yep.
last place AFC team, the last place AFC team, and they're also being mocked to draft a quarterback next year.
Sure.
And it's funny because the everything you just said about Carolina is kind of how I feel about the Tennessee Titans this year.
Interesting. Yeah.
Again, same
It's
thing.
kind
I
of
don't think they're going to be
it's
contenders.
very parallel.
I don't think they're going to be contenders. They might finish last in that division, and I don't think it's because they're horrible. It's just that's an indictment on how competitive that division could be
Sure.
this
Oh
year.
yeah, it's a tough division.
Um, yeah, you got Trevor in Jacksonville. You got CJ with Houston. You've got AR5 with Indy, and I like those teams more than I like the Titans.
Sure.
So I understand why some people are going there, but it's being taken like Carolina to this extreme level of like, because if it's not Carolina number one in the mock, it's the Titans, right?
Yeah.
And I'm just here to defend I'm just going to defend what you guys consider like everybody's just considering to be garbage. Number one, everybody's upset about firing Vrabel. I thought it was time to move on from Vrabel.
Yeah.
I love Mike Vrabel. I respect Mike Vrabel, but the writing was on the wall. Tannehill was done. I don't think Vrabel was the right fit for Levis's personality. I don't think that Vrabel was the right fit to necessarily move on from the post Derrick Henry Titans era. It's a new page.
Yeah. It is.
So it is. It just is. And they ended up hiring Brian Callahan, who was been working in Cincinnati a bunch.
Mhm.
It's an offensive guy. I really like. I think it's a sneaky good hire. Part of what I like about that hire too is that his dad is Bill Callahan, who's like one of the top offensive line coaches like in the history of
Ever.
football. He's like up there with
Ever.
like Skarnecki.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
he's
yeah.
just very respected. Which again, I've had to kind of do my diligence of like looking into these guys and
Yeah.
like where they come from, but. I think it's a good hire. It's not a home run, but I think it's very similar to Canales in Carolina, where it's like, okay, you're getting some offensive juice in here.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something I
love
didn't
that they
even
have
point
a
out.
functioning. Yeah.
Yeah.
I know you didn't, but
Yeah.
I'm doing
No,
it
go.
for you
Thank
because
you.
I do.
Yeah, it's a huge.
No, I
It's a
love
huge piece of the puzzle.
Canales.
It's a huge
Yeah,
piece.
it
Of,
is. I love
is
Canales,
Bryce
bro.
is Bryce not kind of like a Baker Mayfield's prototype? You know what I mean? Like they're very
Yeah,
similar.
but the thing is like I'm in this weird, I feel like, world now where I have to defend Will Levis as being a good QB potentially.
Yep.
And it's similar to like what you were saying about Bryce, right? Everybody loved Bryce coming out of college last year. We saw the tape at Alabama. We saw what he can do. And you feel like he had a bad season and everybody now is being replaced next year. I feel the
Yeah.
same way about Levis.
Yeah.
He's just being replaced. Levis had like a handful of completely electric high level
Yeah.
games last season.
Yeah.
He didn't do nothing. He didn't come in and get worked like Zach Wilson did his rookie year.
Yep.
He showed flashes. He had some bad games. We don't know that he can play the position in a complete way, but they started off by taking that Latham guy from Bama in the first round this year.
Sure.
You bring in the Callahan father-son combination to try to rebuild this offensive line,
Yeah.
retool this offensive line. They
Yeah.
were the worst O-line in football last year. Similar to your take about Bryce, I was watching their tape from last season. Levis had
No time.
2 seconds
No
at the
time.
most to throw the ball, and he was still making plays regularly. He's strong, he's athletic, he's mobile. He throws a really good football. His arm strength is top notch
Unbelievable,
for
yeah.
some of the younger, really, really good. And so you have DeAndre Hopkins, similar to Keenan Allen. I view him as kind of an old dog, but I think he might have a year or two left. He showed some flashes last season. He's not going to be a star
No,
anymore,
he
but he's a
won't.
good wide receiver to get you into that next
Yeah.
level. They overpaid for Calvin Ridley, right?
Yes,
but
they did.
just like Carolina, you have to do that when you're not a real team.
100%.
And so I like Calvin Ridley a lot as a 1B or a 2 or whatever.
Yeah.
I think he suits Levis's skill set a lot with being able to get open downfield and explosive plays. You had Tajay Spears, who I thought was a really good running back. You added Tony Pollard. You moved on from the Henry era of just, these useless yards that they were doing last season. It was so stale.
Yeah,
And I
yes, it
love
was.
Derrick Henry. I think he's an all-timer. But I kind of like the explosiveness and speed and pass catching of the Spears-Pollard combination. Their second-round pick out of Texas, that was puzzling for me, so I don't quite know what that was about.
Yeah.
I don't think they drafted as well. They didn't have as many picks as a
Yeah.
Carolina. But they also added L'Jarius Sneed, allegedly. More
Yeah,
on that later.
what's the deal with that?
I'll have my guys check on that.
Yeah.
I guess he hasn't signed yet officially or what. I don't know. But assuming that Sneed is in a Titan uniform to start next season, I think he's one of the
curious
most
if they've-
underrated corners in football.
Yeah. No, I totally agree.
So I look at this team and it's like this has the makings of a team that could absolutely surprise and win 7 or 8 games like the Bears did. Like, you don't think they could be as good as the Bears next year? You think they're going to win 3 games? They're going to be the worst team in football and Levis is losing his job?
Yeah,
I just don't buy it.
I don't see that.
I don't buy it.
I'm with you.
I've seen bad quarterbacks, and that Levis just isn't that.
Yeah.
He's really, really talented, and I like
Yeah, I saw
they
some
added some
awesome,
really crafty
awesome
veterans.
flashes from him.
Yeah, it's there. It just hasn't put it together yet. But they hired a guy who's just been working with Burrow for years, and they hired his dad to rebuild that offensive line. So
Yeah.
maybe this guy has a pocket like once a drive.
Yeah, no, that's facts.
You've got some weapons. It's not a great
Okay,
weapon.
so they did.
I think
They
Okonkwo's a
They
good
did
tight
post
end.
L'Jarius Sneed, so it did get done.
Okay,
for, like-
recently though, right?
Yeah,
Like,
this
it just
was
happened a few
this
days
was
ago, maybe?
just a couple
Yeah.
couple weeks ago now, but yeah, it was
Okay. Yeah.
for like
So
3.
L'Jarius Sneed is a Titan.
He is officially a Titan. Yep, that's what
Yeah.
I was looking at because
Yeah.
they had announced.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, 7 weeks ago they announced Calvin Ridley, all those signings, and then 2 weeks later they finally announced L'Jarius Sneed. So
Love it,
yeah, there
love
must
it.
have been something
Well,
something
that
there.
only
but
bolsters my point.
no, it does for sure.
Yeah, I think you have yourself some pieces now. And it's an odd cocktail of free agent signings.
Yeah.
I know it looks weird, but similar to Carolina, it's like, let's just get some good
Let's just go get
football
some good
players
football
in
players,
the
bro.
building.
Good football players.
Yeah.
They're out there. Got to pay them.